nor could I move. There were weights in my feet, and my legs were like the legs of a sleeper with nightmare, who must escape and cannot move them. And still that dreadful fumbling went on. So familiar was I with the door to the slide that I knew to the instant when there was space for fingers to catch the edge of it, and I could follow inch by inch its slow movement upward. Infinitely stealthy, all of it, as though time were nothing and only caution mattered. Then at last the power came back into my legs. I ran as I have never run before, crashing into the pan at the top of the stairs and accompanied by it, and in a deluge of water fell the entire length of them and brought up in a sitting position in the hall below, without breath left in me even to scream. Chapter 38. The next sound I heard was Mary's voice, spoken through a crack in her door above. The saints preserve us. Who is it? It's all right, Mary, I gasped. I'm sorry, but it's me again. I fell over your pan. Are you hurt, miss? No, I think not. Mary, there's someone in the dumbwaiter shaft. I've just heard them. But with that I heard her give a low wail, followed instantly by the closing and bolting of her door. There was plainly no help from that direction, and I dare say with the instinct of the woman who saved the parrot and left her baby during a fire, I picked up the album and flew down to the front porch and Herbert Dean. Fortunately, Mother had not awakened. The search which followed, while revealing no intruder in the house, clearly proved that I had been correct about the shaft, and Herbert Dean showed a capacity for sheer rage which surprised me. Damn them all, he said. I've told them this thing isn't over, but they take the guards off. I'll have that inspector's hide for this, and the commissioner's too. Which was followed by a bit of rather stronger language than I care to repeat. The search revealed certain facts. One of these was that as our basement is shut off from the main floor by a strong and well-locked door, it had not been considered necessary to watch the windows with any great care. One of them in fact was wide open, and had been so in all probability since Mary had raised it earlier in the week. Curiously enough, the use of the abandoned old dumbwaiter as a means of access to the house had never occurred to any of us. It went to the basement, since before Mr. Lancaster and my father had done over the two houses the kitchen had been there. But it was years since it had been used. Once Mother had found Annie dropping soiled linen down the shaft, and had sternly forbidden it as a slovenly habit. After that, the shaft door into the laundry had been closed and nailed. It was neither nailed nor closed that night when Herbert Dean reached it, with a revolver in his hand and me at his heels. It was standing wide open, like the window, and examination showed that the old wood had rotted around the nails and must have given way easily. He looked exasperated as he examined it. "Why the devil didn't you tell me this was here?" he demanded. "It's a port of entry for anybody who wants to get into this house. Whoever hit you the other night probably came in this way, for I'd had an eye on the kitchen door, and you trapped them at the foot of the back stairs." "Didn't anyone remember it? Do you imagine we deliberately concealed it?" He laughed a little then, and getting up on a chair he examined the top of the slide itself with meticulous care. "Does the Crescent housekeeping extend to things like this?" he inquired. "That is the top of this thing kept dusted?" Or was it actually forgotten? I imagine no one has seen it at all for 5 years, or dusted the top of it for 15. Somebody has. It's been cleaned lately. Carefully wiped. Very canny, this unknown of ours. Taking no chances. I suppose the ropes are all right? I'm going up on it anyhow, but not until I've taken you up myself and shut you into your room and heard you lock your door. A program which he would have carried out with entire success had he not, on emerging from the schoolroom in the dark, bumped head-on into Annie, who had finally determined to fill the pan again and was on her way to replace it. The resulting uproar was one to waken the dead, and although in the midst of it Herbert Dean managed to escape, to this day Annie insists that an enormous creature that night rushed at her in our upper hall, made an effort to strangle her, and only fled when she doused him with a pan of cold water. This last was true enough, for Herbert spent most of the remainder of that chilly August night on guard outside the house, drenched to the skin and furiously annoyed, and clutching a large and heavy old photograph album by which he seemed to set considerable store. Not that it was really as simple as all that, for Mother was up by that time and on hearing Annie's story had at once called the telephone central and demanded the police. Herbert Dean's insistence on my silence was put to a heavy premium after they arrived, but I kept my own counsel and let Annie tell her story. The result was a thorough searching of the house, followed by the discovery of Herbert himself, with the album neatly tucked under his arm, hidden away in the limousine and obviously not courting discovery. It was a cruising radio car which had come, and the men did not know him. So for the second time within a few days Herbert found himself under arrest. It took a half hour at the station house to get himself identified and released, and before that happened an officer who had seen him taken into the Lancaster house only a few nights before stopped and stared into the room where he was being detained. "Where did you get him again?" he asked the sergeant. "Over on Crescent Place."